Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to our talk show today, Just Talk Live. Today we have a special treat. We have our conversation is going to be around immigration and COVID 19, and I'm delighted to have with us two very special ladies who I've known for, I guess, a very long time now, longer than I've been in Louisville, so very long time around this topic. We have Amanda Kraft, who currently serves and works for the Peace USA. But before she came to the denomination, she was very influential for my transformation story when she was a mission co-worker at the border. Her and her husband Omar, and then we have Jenny Delgado, who does amazing ecumenical work all over the globe, I believe. Jenny will tell us a little bit more about that as the night divulges around just social justice issues in general. But tonight, these two ladies will talk around the immigration issues. And before we dive into our talk tonight and our discussions, I'm just going to introduce my co-host, Lee Cato, and he has a special message for us tonight.
Thanks, Destiny. Welcome, everybody, to Just Talk Live. It's really great to be with you this evening. But before we get to the topic at hand with immigration in the midst of COVID-19, we cannot not speak to the events that happened today and happened this week to our siblings of color. Tonight, we wanted to acknowledge the killing of George Floyd by police brutality in Minneapolis, and we also wanted to acknowledge the white supremacy within the actions of what's in the news right now, the woman in Central Park towards a Black man. And so we did not want to begin this show not acknowledging that and pretending it did not happen this week and pretending it does not exist. And so we acknowledge that, and we condemn that sin, and we always condemn the perpetuation of white supremacy and racism within our world. And so we want to lift up the life of George Floyd, prayers, and hopefully action for his family and for justice to be had. And so we wanted to start off this show with that acknowledgement. So Destiny, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Lee. And I think we'll just have a brief moment of silence, just really brief. Amen. So, as you know, our show is a faith and social justice talk show that is live, and this is our 8th series. So, without further ado, Amanda and Jenny, can you just please tell us a little bit about yourselves? And also, after you tell us about yourselves, can you just, in your own words or context and definition, talk about underlining framework of immigration in the U.S. context?
So a little bit about myself. I am a YAV alum from many years ago. It's been a while, but I served in Guatemala, and that really sort of spurred this interest in how faith and justice intersect with one another, and how faith becomes this expression of the continuation of seeking justice that the path of Jesus leads us on through his life. And so from there, I went to work at the national offices in Louisville. I worked for several years with the peacemaking program. And then I served through World Mission back in Guatemala for several years. And then as a regional liaison along the US-Mexico border, Mexico and Guatemala. and then returned a few years ago to work in the Office of Immigration Issues. And as you all know, through all of those experiences, immigration would have and always has been an important theme. And there's such a connection between life in Central America and life in the United States. And when I talk about immigration, it's a human experience. Oftentimes in the United States, we express immigration only when you cross an international border, and that just isn't true. Migration is a human story. It's something we all share. We do it constantly in the United States, and we move for a variety of reasons. And so it's important to realize that immigration isn't this necessarily critical moment that happens at a border, but it's a decision that individuals and families make every day about what it means to pick up and move your life. And there's a very varied reasons why people choose to move their lives. But I think with the intersection of faith, it is often because of their family, their faith, and a hope that something else and something different is waiting somewhere else. So immigration is people on the move. Jenny, I hand it over to you.
I'm Yenny Delgado. I'm originally from Peru. Here in the United States as a citizen also, I thought as my own life recognized as an immigrant. Not only I live here, I live in the other countries, and that is something that carried with me all my life. I'm a psychologist, specialization in social psychology and international development. That gave me a big door to be a commitment with different groups and projects in different countries, but also I feel kind of called to be theologian. I studied theology in Costa Rica, then living here, I'm doing a second specialization in public theology at Wesley here in Washington, D.C. And from there, I pretty much participate in different organizations. Started my own 10 years ago, a foundation to support education in South America, in Peru and Bolivia, something that I put a lot of my efforts because it's something that I see education is principle to a right to everyone need to, especially native people that I recognize living in Peru or Bolivia and kids who not have opportunity. Currently living in Washington, D.C. area. Also, I'm a rural elder in my local church in Bethesda. And from there, I'm a member, but also of the church, but also someone who really cares for the church and what we can do as a body. And this is what I love to see here because we are in different parts of the country, and PCSA is our big umbrella here in this conversation.
Yeah, Jenny, and I want to start off with kind of a very broad question. Immigration is often very narrow. There's a very narrow definition when people think about immigration. And it's sometimes it's intentional in that way. But to start off our conversation in a more broader sense, I would love to hear y'all's your definition of what immigration is. And I know Amanda mentioned hers, mentioned it a little bit. But yeah, just and we can start with Jenny, your definition of this term that we have come to recognize as immigration.
Yeah, well, immigration is that mobilization that a person from one place to another, right? And for me, we need to know a little bit more of history because the continent, what we now call America, the Americas, some people, like depending, English, Spanish is different, look like, like a different name. The indigenous people call Abjayala. This is what I refer with the land here. And basis of that, we immigrated from north to south for 15,000 years. Like, immigration is part of our ancestral background. Personally, I have North, Central, and South in my DNA, and that is something, a result of a long immigration before Europeans arrived. And that basis of this history, now we need to recognize that borders are new. And borders are a creation of the republics in the last 200 years. And from there, we are seeing like the states who was created in these republics want to have a big kind of power in from their borders and their territory. And from this idea of what is their territory as a private land, give us a stranger communication, understanding about who can live in one side to another. This is why we see a lot of people crossing, not only to the north, going to the south, Central America, as a part of the natural immigration that people have, especially when we see right now, the environment is changing, climate changes over like different territories, and we see a dry season in Central America, and people cannot, as a farmers, they cannot produce what they needed. They need to immigrate. Like, this is kind of like natural resources who are lack of these resources, who are pushing people, and that is kind of immigration. People who are forced to move. They don't want it, but they forced to move, leave their families behind. Other kind of immigration is people coming to the United States because family reunion, like family coming together to live together is one of the big issues. And the other people immigrate from reasons of studies. This is happened with my family. We immigrate because it's study opportunities, and started with a life in different, not United States only, but other countries. And that is kind of like how a person, a human being, is trying to decide if they are moving or not. Some people are more privileged in one set to another because some people have the papers or the visa or the passport to being recognized as someone who have documentation. And this is the difference for me right now, like how it's important everyone have their papers right to transitate. But the problem here is coming when a country in their power of their borders not wanted to give it to these people, to someone who required. And people take the decision, okay, I will do it a different way. But if the country has different laws, definitely more people will start the process if it's needed.
Amanda, did you want to add to your earlier comment?
I think Yenny brought up some really important points. In the United States, because we think of immigration from the context of the nation state, right? When our nation state was created, we often forget this history that happened prior to white colonization of the United States. So again, it's important that people have been moving on this hemisphere for many, many years before white settlers and colonists came. So again, it's a very particular point of view. And what's fascinating is the majority of people who have immigrated to the United States, who chose to move to the United States, did that because of family. Again, in the United States, we often hear myths about why people move here, right? And most of it is based on economics. And that just isn't true. The vast majority of people, with the exception of slavery, the vast majority of people who have decided to come to the United States have done that because of family reunification. And so it's important to remember, as legislators talk about in policy wonk land about immigration, that we remember that it has really been an important piece of our history, because we really have believed in family unity, and that's starting to fall apart. So again, as we sort of look at where our country is going currently, and it has been for many years, I'm not putting this all in the last 4 years, but that it's important to remember it really has been about family reunification and family immigration.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. You brought up certain policies about Congress and things that are going on pre-COVID-19. Can both of you, or you, Amanda, touch a little bit about some of the policies that are kind of hot topics that we might heard about but need some more information to fully understand the bigger picture, and also some of the politics behind immigration that we might not understand but have those misconceptions?
Absolutely. And what's great about the PCUSA is we've been making policy statements about immigration since the late 1800s. So we have a vast variety of policy statements that really allow and encourage us to engage this issue. So again, I don't want people to think, oh, the church doesn't, we really have been very fortunate in being a part of very major movements and points and sort of immigration topics throughout our history. And most recently, I think what's so difficult to understand is this current administration has really decided to monopolize on policy decisions that have been made for decades. And I think a lot of us just didn't realize how far those could go. And so I think it's really important to realize that even under the Obama administration, we were deporting a lot more numbers out of the country. And we started sort of the process of housing families in detention centers that really blossomed during the Obama administration. So again, I think there's some real important pieces to think about, that as policymakers make decisions, they'll compromise on something. And so I think as we think about how faith and justice intersect in the public legislative arena, that we continue to remember that these are real people. And we make decisions based on sort of where our faith calls us to be engaged and how we accompany those individuals. So what we're seeing in this administration is an extreme. So it has built on decades of policy, and it really is about deterring, detaining, and deporting. That really is what our mechanism is set up to do. It's about enforcement. Our immigration policy is not about welcome, beyond sort of what we have done previously with refugee resettlement, which has pretty much been decimated at this point, right? So we were going from accepting around 90,000 refugees to down to 18,000. So again, we're watching an administration really utilizing specific powers that they have in the executive branch to really control what's happening. So again, we are seeing things like limiting asylum seekers. So asylum seekers are now housed in Mexico instead of being able to enter the United States. We're seeing families being separated and families making very difficult decisions about what happens with their children. And those decisions have lasting effects. We have the largest detained populations in the world in the United States. We have children who are housed in our shelters. I mean, it's a constant way in which we keep a population controlled. And the other side of that is just the increase in interior enforcement. And this is one place where this administration has been really different. Is sort of their desire to really utilize enforcement in the interior to create fear. And so we're seeing policies that are really pushing enforcement right up to what we would consider sensitive locations like schools and hospitals and churches. You know, they won't enforce inside, but we'll go right up to that property line, right? We'll arrest a family member who's waiting for their child in the school line to pick up their child. We'll pick them up at the bus stop. So again, we're seeing this administration being really willing to allow that kind of fear to exist, and sort of not being able to think about what are the long-term effects for families who are really facing the constant barrage of the trauma that creates. And also, it's Yenny talked about the intersections of what happens, and immigration is one of those places where race and nationality and ethnicity hit together and really create a way in which policing happens in really difficult ways, the way in which we place them in detention centers with they're incarcerated populations. Again, it's a continuation of that. And Congress has been really slow to act. We have seen the termination of the deferred action for childhood arrivals. We've seen the termination of lots of temporary kinds of liminal statuses like temporary protected status or stays of removal, which allow people to stay in the country without being deported. All of those are now falling apart. And so we're seeing an administration who has really utilized this as a campaign tool.
Also want to add some numbers here. We see for the southern border, United States have 4 borders, but the problem for the government always is, there's the southern border with Mexico. Because when immigrants from the Pacific side, Atlantic side coming in a flight, in a plane, and they have a visa. But we have a lot of people who overstay the visa for one reason or other. You have more rights if you enter to the country with a visa. If you cross the border, the southern border with Mexico, by foot, and you don't have a passport, you are automatically never, by these laws, have your paper right in one point of your life. And that is sad, because we see 40% of the population in the United States are immigrants, and most of them are from Mexico, because it's like the first country border with Mexico. When the United States is saying we want to build a wall, it's not only with Mexico, they want to separate it for the whole continent. And for me, it is really, really interesting to see, like, you want to separate you from the whole of the 33 countries. And that is very ideological point of build the wall. But also saying about numbers, 28% of the population right now are coming from immigrants and their kids, their family. The U.S. The kids who born here who are U.S. citizens, and their parents is one family. And this means it's 28% of the population. When someone is like being deported, it's not only one person, maybe it's the wife or the husband, their kids, maybe 4 or 5 people are involved in this really evil decision of the government. We are broken families. We was saying last year about these concentration camps where kids was there, when family was separated, when even a lot of abuse, sexual abuse for the kids and young women. Like, we are seeing all these, and because it's important to know history, it's not new. If we remember history here, we saw no reservations, how we're created, or the schools, the border schools, all these systems is perpetuated, and now the new target are the immigrants who cross the border on the southern border. This is a new target. In the past was the native people who live here in the territory. But you see the faces of the kids and the family who cross the border. I remember watching the news, and when they was full covered with paper towel, because it was really cold, foil paper, and all these, and I see kids, really small, young mothers, 20, 25, with 2 or 3 kids, and that was native people. If we recognize someone really original people of this land, they are. Only because their family is on the other side of the border, we cannot say, oh no, they're not native people. They're native. But because the United States decided to, this territory territorial or border with Mexico, they are not being recognized as people who have been in this land for thousands of years. And I was broken my heart watching all these videos last year of pictures, and like, this is my brothers and sisters. I'm part of this family, what we are doing. And that is how the church, as immigration, but also Native American native rights need to be also be in place. And I think something that we need to talk about it, because if we see they're Mexicans, they're Mexican. We are putting behind the table, the mat, some of our discussion of who is here, especially in this time. The young people want to know where is the ethnicity when they are especially mixed, so they want to know where their parents come from, or what countries in Africa, what countries in Europe, in Asia. And it's kind of like a movement, a young generation who we want to know, because it's more than the boxes or the labels what the country has given us. We want to know who are our ancestors. We want to praise them. We want to remember them. And for me, it's important to see these cases in the country, because if we know the numbers, it's 28%. It's a lot, of 30% of the population. Like, what we will do, we're planning to separate the families and have kids, broken the heart, but also with psychological effects. Maybe we will have a family again, or be in adoption centers. Like, what we want as a country, and what the church has to say about this.
And I'm hearing y'all speak that immigration, it's not a political topic. It is humanity, and it is the human experience that when we're discussing borders and we're discussing who is in and who is out, that we are speaking to the human experience and not just a topic of politics that we've been hearing for, that's up the ante in the last 4 years. And I'm also hear y'all talk about how a lot of what is happening now with this administration, and we're just going to name it. I mean, this administration has definitely used fear as a way to move the policies that it is instituting. Now, as representatives of the denomination, we can't necessarily say who that is, but we can say this administration and everybody else.
No, it is.
And so, but this administration has used fear, and now we are in a moment, COVID-19, where that fear has escalated. Everybody is fearful of what is happening right now. We're all in this new this kind of new way of being that nobody can really figure out how to navigate. And so, and also immigration has not been talked about a lot in the last several months because of what is happening. And so I wonder, how has this escalated amount of fear along with this pandemic, how has it affected the policies and just how society is viewing immigration now, since it's changed so much in the past few months because of this pandemic. So I just wonder about that.
Well, I can say about COVID-19, there really, this pandemic, we are in our safe place, in our home. And from the beginning, March, right? We had the option to work from home, to take classes from home, and don't change your income. People are doing this in-home house, teleworking. We're in the safe place. But millions of people lose their jobs. Millions of people are unemployment right now, and we know that these people also lose their health insurance cover. And something that is amazing is like we don't have a public health center, hospitals, nothing. And people don't know outside. When I talk about like, is this not only lose their job income, but also you are losing your health opportunity to see a doctor or something, because COVID is here. But it's not that only people don't only suffer from COVID. They have other sickness. They suffer for other stuff, and they need to see a doctor. How they can cover this a doctor, how they can pay for it. And now I see COVID as a visualization, also the other things. What is affected? You know, people of color, women who are now exposed to go out and work, station workers who are in the supermarket, who are in places that they don't want to be, and they need to go back to their house every single day, and maybe worry about affected, because the dangerous of this virus is 2 weeks without knowing that you have this virus. It's not like a flu that you feel sickness quickly maybe and go to bed and rest. This is something different that is a risk for many reasons. This is why 100,000 people die in the last month, and keeping like it's kind of silence this weekend. And really sad to see we lost all these people, and we don't even know who they are, because the administration that we live here, they don't even mention it. Who are these people? But also see who are picking all vegetables and fruits. This is summer season, and we are farmers are producing vegetables. Who are there? Who are in the farmer side? Who are the harbors? And I see the pictures. I was talking with pastors who in California, who was really talking with these people, with these groups, visiting them on the countryside, and they are not all Mexicans, but they are brothers and sisters from the South, coming to work hard, and even without protection, they are doing every single day. Here, you know, with paying their bags. Do you imagine the cherries and the strawberry that we're eating in the supermarket, buying as an easy thing packet? They are doing every single day, and they don't have even cover. And if we see about immigration, people who hate immigrants are thinking like, oh, we don't need these people, but they are picking our fruits. That is something that for me is not only painful, but it's see like the other side. What is our humanity in this case? Well, we are still our brothers and sisters right now. We see them as a humans, or someone who, where they call it in Spanish, braceros, with your hands. You are only here to pick in, right? Mm-hmm. To cleaning and to do stuff, but not the whole body. And as a Christian, as a whole spirit, that we are more than bodies. And that is something for me that COVID are showing us, put it on the table and saying like, is this the truth? Mm. What we will do? So many people saying like, it's this opportunity. This pandemic is an opportunity for us as a church, as a community. We want to change our policies. We want to change as a human beings. We want to change or make a better place. Or maybe people who want to come to the normality and a normal life do the same exactly wrong thing. This is an opportunity for us. It's a question maybe we need to answer soon enough, sooner or later, because it's something that we cannot come to the end of the pandemic without changing. Mm.
Yeah, I'm from South Carolina, and I grew up with peach farms and worked on one all throughout the summer. And our siblings from Mexico, from Costa Rica, from a lot of Central American countries, they were the ones who were out in the fields picking the peaches, picking the blackberries, picking the strawberries. And so, yeah, it is, I feel as though this is, our brothers and sisters are being affected and not being protected, but also being thought of as disposable, as machinery, as harvesters, and not as a harvest machine, not even a harvester. A harvester is a person, but a harvesting machine. I've heard that growing up. Like I've heard that rhetoric growing up, and so I'm glad you mentioned that as we're having this discussion about now in the midst of this pandemic, that those that our siblings who are doing that work are not being protected, but also being seen as disposable. So yeah, it hits everywhere. The South, California, everywhere that there is harvesting to be done in this country. Amanda, I wondered if you wanted to chime in on that question too.
Yeah, agricultural production in this country has always been built on the backs of the need of cheap labor, right? So we expanded drastically under slavery, and when we abolished slavery, well, first it was indigenous persons, right? But we didn't have enough of them, so then we imported them. And then once slavery was abolished, what happens, right? So we need these. We need workers, and so what has happened is that we tend to import those kinds of workers. And white nationalism and xenophobia have allowed us to continue sort of our racist understanding of who is valuable in this country. And we define that in a myriad of ways based on the social construct of race. So again, we tend to import these workers, and they're not all imported workers, right? We have lots of people who work in food supply chains who are not immigrants. But the vast majority of people of color. And again, we don't have worker rights established in those areas of work. So again, what Jenny graciously explained is we have a system set up that doesn't allow workers to be protected. And it's been interesting to talk with folks around the country, and people who are undocumented who work in the food supply chain will say, no one really cared about me before, but now I have this letter that says I'm an essential worker. So I have a paper that allows me to travel in places that are stay-at-home orders, but I can travel. And yet I don't have any documentation that's going to keep me safe in this country. So it's this very strange system that we have set up that keeps groups in categories and continues to abuse and exploit. And so again, I think it's really important. I think Yenny's right. We have to have these conversations about how do we protect everyone in our communities? How do we have conversations about people who really do essential work, right? I think even that expansion of understanding essential workers has been helpful. Who are those people who do supply these necessary things that we need to live? And shifting a bit even to the medical field, we have almost 30,000 people in the medical field who are here under DACA. And again, we have to have these conversations about these temporary statuses and about individuals who really do provide valuable services and who are human beings beyond what service they provide us, right? That they are people in our communities. Many of them have been here for decades, and we won't have these conversations about what all that means. I mentioned the Chinese Exclusion Act at the beginning, and that rhetoric of invasion has been so helpful to white supremacy and white nationalism to really take hold and create fear. So not only do we create fear in those who are here on liminal statuses or who aren't here at all on status, we also create fear in people who have power, and that creates and continues to create, sort of the narrative that we saw in Central Park, right? All of that continues to be ingrained into us. And how do we start to look at COVID-19 as it starts to break it all apart, right? You can't gloss over this anymore. We really do need to talk about it. So I do hope that will happen. I mean, we're having hot spots that are happening currently in the United States are happening in high immigrant areas. So they're happening where immigrant families live in dense populations, right? They're housed densely, they can't separate, they can't social distance. The majority of people in meat packing facilities, right? A lot of those are refugees or immigrants in the United States. We have lots of hotspots that are happening in incarcerated populations, again, in detention centers. So it's really important that we have these conversations about people who can't social distance, they don't have the ability to do that. People who don't have access to proper health care that then become a greater percentage of deaths in the United States. You know, when we talk about, but I love listening to public health officials who sort of understand that the communal health is what's important, right? It's this ability to be able to exist with one another that keeps us all healthy. And I think as a faith community, we have to have those conversations too. What is it that makes our communities healthy? And it's when we can live fully together, when we can understand how God's mercy and justice lives through all of us, that those of us who have been settled in our homes for generations realize that we come from a vast history of migrants through biblical history, right? So again, there's this real need to sit down and look at these justice issues, to look at how race has been so important in our immigration law that keeps individuals either out or without access to regularize their status. So, you know, again, we make certain decisions in this country that are not innocuous. They're not decisions that are necessarily based on justice, but they're decisions that we make based on a history that we need to confront white supremacy. We need to confront white nationalism to be able to start to break down. I hope COVID-19 provides that opportunity. You know, it was fascinating. I was talking with some family members the other day, and we were talking about how immigrant families oftentimes send bodies back home to be buried. And it's consulates that help them process and do that. And even now, they're not able to send bodies back home, right? You can send ashes back, but you can't send a body back. Again, we're making really difficult decisions for people who have lived in this country for many, many years. Many who are part of mixed status families, like Yenny brought up. So we do need to think about it. We are creating cycles of trauma that will have an impact, and we need to think about how we do this all together. Oh, one last thing I will say, we are deporting the virus as well. So we have made decisions to continue to deport individuals, even though we know they've been exposed. Haiti and Guatemala have been huge hotspots because of our decision to deport individuals.
Wow. I'll just sit with that for a while. Thank you, Amanda and Jenny. As you all have stated, even Lee, this goes farther than a political issue. This is a humanity issue. And even just to bring up the intersectionalities of COVID-19 beyond immigration, from healthcare to education to who has the proper care to work, at the crux of all of that, and you know, which the Young Adult Volunteer Program helps us to realize, is most of it is about race. As far as, you know, today, Lee mentioning a simple walk in the park, for the implicit bias to who is considered valuable or exposable to not seen as a true person to work. So thank you for lifting up those intersectionalities. That's very important to name and call, especially as people of faith, that's a sin. Shifting gears to what we are called to do as people of faith, can you talk about any work that you have done with the church around COVID-19? How are we as Christians, as people of faith, called to move, even though we hopefully are still practicing social distancing, even though depending where you live, you know, restrictions might have lightened up. And I mean, I don't judge, but for me and my house will be in the house. Just saying.
I'm not
So
going.
how can people be engaged and practice their faith around COVID-19 and immigration issues during this time?
Who wants to
Well,
take that on?
yeah, no, we are. Well, definitely. Now the quarantine is more flexible. Look like I don't want to say no. I don't want to use liberated. People now feel free because it's sad in the weekend that we are more than 100,000 um, bodies and people was in the beaches and was in the pools and was celebrating as a party. That was sad to see. And not only here, people see it around the world. The pictures, the videos, and that is saying something to us. 100,000 people is more people died than the last 50, 70 years of war that the United States created outside. That is something that we need to think about it because um, we must see as a whole body how the churches are responding to these situations. We was talking about if the church will be open or the temples. The temple will be open. The church is always active. We are here talking about the mission and the church, and this is us. And we now transited from being the building to be on live, videos. But if we open the temples, we open the buildings, what will happen? That is another situation. Um, and now it looks like everyone will make that decision. Like it's more a personal issue, more individualistic. One more thing in all the idea that we have here in the country is like only me. If I don't sick, I don't see my family sick, we are fine. And that's a problem because people who are essential workers, once again, Amanda mentioned, like we are here discussing and they are still working. It's their own life and the numbers don't lie. African American community be affected by first, and then immigrants and Latino communities. And this morning I was hearing, the New York have a project situation about mention the names of all the people who die, and I think they spent one full day mention names, and they calculated maybe in 3 days they will mention the names all the people who died. And listening the names and the age of these people is like very sad to see like they disappear this world without knowing like who was all these people, who they were working in. And that is something that we need to realize as a church, as a body, well, how we can do also in this situation, because maybe it will happen in our own church. But for me, I was thinking how this situation, what this pandemic is teaching us, what kind of theology, and as a theologian, like what kind of theology we can bring to my community. And I don't find other else than a liberation theology. Liberation theology is a response for people who are being oppressed. And this pandemic is one more thing, because as we was talking, like buy for color skin, for color your hair, how your hair look like, economical condition, where in the country you live, also what kind of house do you have, if you are rented or is your property. People who are renting are now suffer a lot of issues because they cannot pay the rent. These kind of groups that we see more and more affected. And for me, it's like what God will do, like how as a church we will respond on this situation. And liberation theology from Gustavo Gutierrez, even to James Cone, Martin Luther King, and now find out a really nice reading for womanist theology. That is something that we can bring into a discussion. What kind of God we are seeking in this time? And really is the people, the God who have an auction for the poor and oppressed. I don't find another one. And not for the corporation, not the guy who go for all these rich people who are making more money with all this pandemic. They're not going for them. God is going for people who we are talking about, like for our brothers and sisters who are essential workers and also are in the medical fields, nurses, doctors, and all the people who are in the hospitals working now, even cleaning all these services, and God is answered to them. And I think the church needs to be open to discuss more of this theology, even if we coming from a progressive church. Sometimes it's hard for people to think about God have a preferential auction for the poor. People like, wow, it's not fair. Some people can think about it, right? Especially in my local church. Sometimes it's like, but we are not talking about the poor all the time. Like, but it's not. What is our mission? The people who have money have food on the table every single day, have a place and safe shelter, and a lot of maybe more than they needed. How we will spend time with these people, right? Like we must answer to the community who will need it, and maybe we will understand God's message. That is something for me that this pandemic are open to this to faith and justice, faith and resistance also, because this is not ending anytime soon.
No, it is not ending anytime soon. And that is such a strong message to send to our church, not just our Presbyterian denomination, but the Church Universal. As we are not in the temple now, we are in the world, doing this this thing we call Zoom and this thing we call virtual communication. But it is a message now that I think that it is a chance for us to reorient ourselves as the church to take that turn and really speak into that, that we do follow a God that is a God of the poor and the God of the oppressed. And so how we reorient ourselves during this time, maybe we all need to sit and ponder that more as a church and as a people. But we are so grateful for you two. We are coming up on the end of our time. But we did want to open it up. If you have any closing comments, remarks, anything that is burning in your heart for us to hear this evening, we wanted to open that up to you if you have any closing remarks.
Lee, before Amanda and Jenny give their closing remarks, I just want to say, viewers, if you want to ask any questions quickly for our participants, we can post a response on the YAV page and also on Unbound. And I just want to give a shout out to some of our viewers. One is Kaylee V. She's a YAV alum, and she's actually going to use our recording today for her class that she's teaching at the University of Auckland. So I think that's awesome, on migration and violence in America. And also for some other comments that we received about collaboration, not only within the PCUSA, the denomination being workers, Alanda, Lee, and I, but also to bring in the constituent voice, like Jenny, for other PCUSA leaders that are on the forefront. So I wanted to throw that in there. And thank you all for watching before they give us their closing remarks.
want to end with a quote from Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who says, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." And I think it's so important for those of us who represent privilege in the United States to be uncomfortable, to be willing to find ways that push our understanding of justice and our understandings of systemic and structural injustice. As we continue to say, people on the margins, and it makes me think so much of the Christian ethicist Miguel de la Torre, who does a lot of great work of really trying to even refocus how we evaluate ethics, and really hearing those voices in the margins who can help guide us. And I think that's that space where faith becomes so critical. We're all equal in front of God's eyes. We're all made in God's image, and there's something unique and special about each of us. And how do we get to that place where we can understand that, and then start to break apart? First we have to just, how do we learn to just love one another, and then start to break apart those justice issues, and then be energized to be that advocate. And it's important. It's important that we understand that we have a voice to give, and we have a voice to lift up, and we have hands and feet to offer, and that it is an opportunity for us to understand just how large God's family is, and the beauty that comes with that. The be able to start breaking down those images of invaders, or those who come with diseases, or those who are violent criminals. The vast majority are people of faith who are part of our faith community, and the full religious expression of that. And so it's a beautiful opportunity to understand the world, and it's a beautiful opportunity to understand how God operates in the world. And immigration allows individuals the opportunity to start in that piece of structural injustice, and it should allow you to just open up the world in a new way. So I encourage you not to be neutral. Find something. And I'll even highlight refugee resettlement agencies. That's a great way to get started. They're experts at what they do. They've been doing it for many, many years. And those are oftentimes former refugees in those places. So that's a great place to sort of start to dig in.
Yeah, well, I want to finish this conversation, but not without saying, like, God, who we believe not only was on the side of people who are suffering, he was one who suffered from the beginning. But where he born in the small poor place, that is something that they need to tell us. Even if we are worried about many situations what happen in the country, we can live together and build in a different way. Immigrants are no in the last years, and saying, like, they use a lot about illegal, and that broke my heart every time I hear, like, no human being is illegal. Like, stop saying, and I raise my hand and raise my voice every time. And that is something that we need to remember. And if we hear it in the church, it's not acceptable. If we hear in the society, it's not acceptable. And I think this is a small role, maybe, even if someone don't know where is their voice or what can do in these situations. Start with this conversation, and the church need to be more open, and maybe one day we will start a bigger message, and that is, for me, there is a constant. Even me, like my own existence, living in the United States is one. Like, I can be target all this hate message, all this because the color of my skin, because my hair, because my accent, because why I talk in this way or other, right? Like, And that for me is give me the courage to talk in the church, to say something. But not only me, because I need the support of others, not only me because you're the immigrant, talk about it, but all the churches as a whole body. Please remember this and open your heart to learn about the history, and maybe your own family history can help to understand what an immigrant feels. You know, like 3-4 generations ago, maybe people can find the answer why their grandparents moved to here or was bring to this place, and the suffer to be in a new place, in a new language, in a new society. That can be more, maybe more human to another people who are in the same need in this 2020.
Awesome. And Amanda, did you have something?
Yeah, I will just quickly share. I did pull together some resources for folks so that you could dig digger into some learning spaces and some advocacy places where you can sort of dig into the advocacy part of it. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Oh, I don't think I can.
Uh-oh.
Lee, do you have to give her permission to share the screen?
Try it now.
There it goes.
That's what happens on live, I think.
You know, we're all learning.
You're working out.
Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay, so these are just some resources that I pulled together, and I think Lee will be sharing the link to these resources when the video is also released this time together. But really just wanted to highlight a few things. The PCUSA has pulled together a COVID-19 response page, and on there are some resources about how to help immigrants and refugees and migrants in your community. So you can go there to sort of get some information about how that's happening. Some of it's advocacy, some of it's accompaniment, some of it's direct service. So sort of where you feel most called in the communities around you. I would highlight that one. The next section on the learning is really just an opportunity to dig into some of the themes that move through immigration issues. And United We Dream, which is one of the largest youth-based run organizations in the country, all of immigrant youth, has really been very vocal around COVID-19 and resources that are available. So if you're interested in that, and the tie-in then to DACA is really important through that organization. And there's some really good resources too. The Supreme Court is supposed to be making a decision about the termination of DACA sometime between now and June. So there's some good resources there to figure out what's going on, and just additional information about understanding immigration that happens in the United States. One other important event, I love to see that there's so many of these events going on around the church. Mostly Compassion, Peace, and Justice within the PCUSA, within the Presbyterian Mission Agency, along with our racial equity folks, have been hosting a series of seminars on COVID at the margins. Some of those have happened already. Some of them are going to happen in the future. So I wanted to highlight those as well if people are more interested. The one coming up on next Monday will be focused on the LGBTQIA community, and there's a link to participate in that. And then the last section is action, and I'm just going to highlight a few of these. The first one is the US Census. So much funding decisions happen based on the US Census. And we all know that for communities of color, they are drastically undercounted. So it's so important, regardless of immigration status. I know there's a huge fear for those who are in temporary or who are undocumented to participate out of what we thought was going to be a citizenship question. It's not on there. Lots of great churches are coming together to sort of host immigrant populations to come in and do those out online, to help them fill those out online. So there's ways in which we can create some sense of security to have communities really participate. We want to make sure everyone's counted so that the US government makes important decisions about the services it provides to everyone in this country. The other one is the HEROES Act, which is another act that passed the House, and it has not yet passed the Senate, but it has very important pieces and points of legislation in there that protect workers, essential workers, that weren't included in previous stimulus packages. So that's a really important one to really focus on and talk to your senators about. The last one I will highlight is the last one, report an incident of hate. Again, we talked about xenophobia, right? And we've talked about invasion. Again, the narrative that we're hearing from national leadership in this country have really highlighted that this was a virus that came from a certain part of the world. And that has created incendiary actions against people in this country. And it's really important that they track that they realize things are being reported, and then also sort of what's the resolution on that. So we really need to be very aware of how anyone perceived of Asian descent is being treated in the United States right now. They're a high target group for violence at this point. So again, a variety of ways to engage, but really wanting to encourage you to think about what is this piece in the immigration issue that intrigues me, I want to learn more, and then how do I get engaged?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing those resources with us. And this has been a true blessing for me. I won't speak for Destiny, but I am so honored to get to meet you and to be in your presence tonight, and for your well of knowledge and for your just awesome commitment to the people of God. And so we thank you and for being with us tonight. So next week, we'll give a plug in for next week. Next week on Just Talk Live, we are going to be talking about college students. College students have been affected by this virus as well. Many of them did not get to go to their graduations. Many of them were kicked out of school way too soon and could not technically go back to school. Many of them have suffered a lot during this time, and it's often not spoken about in this moment of time. So we're going to focus on our young adult college students. And Destiny, I love you. Thank you again for being my partner in this journey with us. And thank y'all. Thank Amanda and Jenny again for being with us this evening. And till next time, siblings, we will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.